When I opened the safe after my mother's funeral, it was empty, except for a note to me. Hi everyone. Before we get into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel's reach has been dropping a bit, and one of the best ways you can support us is by subscribing. It's quick, free, and helps us keep bringing you new and interesting stories. Your support means the world to us, and together we can grow this channel. Thank you so much. Now let's get to today's story. I'm writing from a temporary account for obvious reasons, and I've changed some details to protect my anonymity. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Rain hammered the cemetery in sheets, turning the path to her grave into a river of mud. 63 people came. I counted them. I needed something to focus on besides the casket being lowered into the ground, besides the finality of that moment when they started shoveling dirt onto the polished wood. My mother, Eleanor Hartwell, was dead at 71. Cancer. Fast and merciless. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. She'd handled it the way she handled everything, with cool efficiency and absolute privacy. No drama. No tears in front of others. No weakness. Even at the end, lying in the hospital bed with morphine dripping into her veins, she'd maintained that iron composure. She'd gripped my hand once, hard, and said, "The safe. You remember the combination?" "Mom, don't you remember it?" "Yes." "Good. Open it after I'm gone. Not before. After." Those were the last words she spoke to me. 3 days later, she was gone. Now it was after. The house felt enormous and empty when I returned from the cemetery. My childhood home, a Victorian manor on 3 acres of woods outside Portland. 12 rooms, high ceilings, dark wood paneling. The kind of place that absorbed sound and held secrets. I'd grown up here alone, an only child of distant parents who'd loved me in their austere way, but never quite warmed to the chaos of childhood. My father had died when I was 16. Heart attack at his desk, papers scattered around him. My mother had found him and called 911 with the same calm voice she used to order groceries. After that, it was just the two of us in this big house. She'd never remarried, never dated, never seemed to want anything except her routines and her privacy. I walked through the rooms slowly, still in my funeral dress, touching things. The grand piano she'd played every evening at 7. The library with its floor-to-ceiling books, organized by author and genre. The kitchen where she'd cooked elaborate meals for just the two of us, insisting on proper place settings and cloth napkins even on weeknights. Everything in its place. Everything ordered and controlled. Except now she was gone, and the order felt like a shell around emptiness. The safe was in her bedroom, behind a painting of the Oregon coast. I'd known about it my whole life. She'd shown it to me when I was 12, made me memorize the combination. "In case of emergency," she'd said. "But only emergency, Claire. This is private." I'd never opened it, never even tried. That wasn't how things worked in our family. Privacy was sacred. Boundaries were respected. But now she'd told me to open it. She'd made it my responsibility. I went upstairs. The bedroom was immaculate as always. Bed made with hospital corners, dresser with her jewelry box, her perfume bottles arranged by height. The smell of her lavender sachets still hung in the air. I swung the painting aside. The safe was built into the wall, heavy steel with a digital keypad. I entered the combination. 04 C70 1952. Her birthday. The lock clicked. I pulled the handle and the door swung open. Empty. Completely empty. Except for a single piece of paper, folded once, lying in the center of the empty space. My hands shook as I picked it up. My mother's handwriting, neat and precise. "Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Everything that was in this safe, the jewelry, the documents, the cash, all of it, I moved it before I died. You won't find it here, but you know where to look. You've always known. I made sure of that. Follow the breadcrumbs, darling. Follow them all the way back. And when you find what I left you, you'll understand everything. You'll understand why I was the way I was. Why I kept you at arm's length. Why I never let you truly know me. I'm sorry for the distance, but I'm not sorry for the secrets. They kept us both safe. Start where we always started. You know the place. I love you. I always did, even when I couldn't show it. Mom. I read it 3 times. My chest felt tight. My breath came shallow. Start where we always started. I knew exactly what she meant. And suddenly I was afraid. Part 1. The garden house. The garden house sat at the edge of our property, hidden behind a wall of overgrown rhododendrons. It was a small structure, maybe 10 by 12 feet, built by my grandfather decades ago. He'd used it as a workshop. After he died, my mother had converted it into a reading room, a private space where she'd spend hours with her books and her thoughts. As a child, I was rarely allowed inside. It was her sanctuary. But once a month, on the first Sunday, she'd invite me in for what she called our tradition. We'd sit together in the 2 armchairs by the window, and she'd read to me from a book of fairy tales. Not children's stories, the old ones, the dark ones. The grim tales with their wolves and witches and children lost in forests. Start where we always started. The garden house. That's where she meant. I hadn't been inside since I was 17, since I'd left for college and stopped coming home as often. I'd assumed she still used it, but I'd never asked. Privacy. Boundaries. Now I walked across the wet grass toward the rhododendrons, my funeral shoes sinking into the soft earth. The garden house door was painted green, peeling now, handle rusty. I tried it. Locked. I didn't have a key. I went back to the main house and searched through the kitchen drawers where my mother kept her miscellaneous keys. Nothing labeled for the garden house. Then I remembered she'd kept a spare key hidden. I'd seen her retrieve it once when I was young, when she'd locked herself out. Where was it? The window box. The one outside the kitchen window, now empty of flowers. I went back outside, lifted the window box off its brackets, and turned it over. Taped to the bottom was a small key in a plastic bag. My heart pounded as I returned to the garden house and unlocked the door. Inside, the air was musty and cold. The furniture was still there. The 2 armchairs, faded and dusty. The bookshelf, mostly empty now. A small table. Everything covered in years of accumulated dust and neglect. But something was different. In the center of the floor sat a wooden box I didn't recognize. New, clean, deliberately placed. I knelt beside it. The box was about the size of a briefcase, made of dark wood with brass hinges. No lock. I lifted the lid. Inside were 3 items. First, a leather journal. Brown, worn, filled with my mother's handwriting. Second, a manila envelope, sealed, with my name written on it. Third, a photograph I'd never seen before. I picked up the photograph first. It showed my mother, but younger, maybe 30 years old. She was standing in front of a building I didn't recognize. Somewhere urban. New York, maybe? Or Boston. She was smiling, genuinely smiling, in a way I'd rarely seen. And beside her, with his arm around her shoulders, was a man I'd never seen before. Tall, dark-haired, handsome. They looked happy. They looked in love. I flipped the photo over. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, Michael and Eleanor, 1982. 1982. That was the year before I was born. Michael. I'd never heard that name in my life. I set the photo aside and picked up the journal. Opened it to the first page. January 3rd, 1982. His name is Michael Reeves, and I think I'm falling in love with him. This is dangerous. This is stupid. This goes against everything I've built, everything I've protected. But God, when he looks at me, I feel alive. I sat back on my heels, the journal trembling in my hands. This wasn't possible. My mother didn't fall in love. She'd been married to my father, had been devoted to him, had mourned him quietly and privately after his death. But this journal told a different story. I flipped through the pages. Entry after entry, spanning months. A hidden relationship. Secret meetings. A passion I'd never imagined my mother capable of feeling. March 15th, 1982. Michael wants me to leave David. He says we could start over, somewhere new. He says he loves me enough for both of us. But he doesn't understand. David and I have an arrangement. A life. A purpose. I can't just walk away from that. Even for Michael. Even for love. David. My father. An arrangement. What did that mean? I kept reading. Faster now, my hands shaking. June 2nd, 1982. I told Michael about the work. I shouldn't have. It was a violation of every rule, every protocol. But I needed him to understand why I can't leave. Why I can't be what he wants me to be. He didn't take it well. He said I have to choose him or the work. He gave me 2 weeks to decide. I already know what I'm going to choose. I've always known. The work is bigger than love, bigger than happiness. It's bigger than me. The work. What work? August 10, 1982. I'm pregnant. The timing is impossible. It could be David's, it could be Michael's. I'll never know for certain, and I'll never tell either of them the truth. This child will be mine. Only mine. That's the only way this works. Michael is gone. I ended it last week. He called me cold, heartless. Said I was choosing duty over love? He's right. I am. David doesn't know about Michael. He doesn't know about any of it. Our arrangement allows for privacy, for separate lives within the same marriage. He has his secrets. I have mine. The baby will bind us together in a way we've never been bound before. A shared purpose. A shared creation. I'll name her Claire, after my grandmother. And I'll raise her to be strong. Strong enough to survive without love if she has to. Strong enough to choose duty when it matters. I'll raise her to never need anyone the way I needed Michael. I closed the journal. My chest felt hollow. My hands were numb. I was reading about my own conception, about my mother's affair, about the possibility that my father might not actually be my father. Everything I'd believed about my family, about my childhood, about my mother's cold distance. It was all reframed in an instant. She hadn't been emotionally distant because she was naturally cold. She'd been distant because she was protecting something, hiding something, protecting me from the truth. I picked up the manila envelope and tore it open. Inside were documents. Official documents with government seals, security clearances, personnel files. My mother's name appeared on every page, but not as Eleanor Hartwell, as Eleanor Hartwell Reeves. And her occupation was listed not as homemaker or volunteer, but as intelligence officer, CIA. My mother had been a spy. The room spun around me. I sat down hard in one of the dusty armchairs, papers scattering across my lap. CIA, intelligence officer, classified operations spanning 30 years. My elegant, private, emotionally reserved mother had been living a double life. Not just from me, but from everyone. My father, David Hartwell, his file was there too. Also CIA. They'd been partners. That's what she'd meant by arrangement. Their marriage wasn't a love match. It was a cover. A convenience for two officers who needed the appearance of normal civilian life. And Michael Reeves? I searched through the papers until I found his name. Deceased. 1985. Classified circumstances. 3 years after their affair ended. 2 years after I was born. My mother had left him to return to her work, to her arranged marriage, to the life of secrets and lies. And 3 years later, he was dead. Coincidence? Or consequence? I picked up the journal again and flipped to the end. The last entry was dated just 2 weeks ago, written in shaky handwriting that barely resembled my mother's usual precise script. Claire, by now you've found the journal. You've read the letters, you know about Michael. You deserve the truth, even if it comes too late. Michael Reeves was the love of my life, the only man I ever truly loved. Your father, David, was a good man, a good partner, but never a husband in the real sense. We had respect, we had cooperation, but never love. When I got pregnant, I hoped it was David's child. It would be simpler that way. cleaner. But I knew it might be Michael's. The timing was ambiguous. I chose never to find out. I chose to believe you were David's because that made the life I'd chosen bearable. If you were Michael's daughter, then I'd given up my only chance at real love for nothing. I couldn't live with that. So I pushed you away. I kept you at arm's length. Not because I didn't love you, God, Claire. I loved you more than anything, but because every time I looked at you, I saw Michael. Your eyes, your smile, your stubborn independence. You were so much like him. And it broke my heart every single day. Michael died in 1985. Officially, it was an accident, a car crash in Berlin. But I knew better. I knew the people we worked against. I knew what they did to agents who got too close. Michael was working on something dangerous, something that connected to my operations. And when he died, I knew it was my fault. I'd told him too much. I'd drawn him into my world and it killed him. After that, I threw myself into the work. I couldn't bring him back, but I could make sure his death meant something. I could finish what he started. And I could keep you safe. Keep you far away from this life. Keep you ignorant and innocent and protected. That's why I was cold. That's why I never let you in. It wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I loved you too much to risk losing you the way I lost Michael. Now I'm dying, and you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know that you come from love, even if that love was complicated and painful and ultimately tragic. The jewelry, the documents, the cash from the safe. I left it all for you, but not here. It's somewhere Michael and I used to meet. Somewhere we felt safe, at least for a little while. Go to New York, find the building in the photograph. 3rd floor, apartment 3B. The super's name is Giuseppe. Tell him Eleanor sent you. He'll let you in. Inside, you'll find everything I left you. Not just the money and jewelry, but answers. Michael's files, my files, everything. And then you have a choice to make. You can walk away, take the inheritance, sell this house, live a normal life. That's what I want for you. That's what I've always wanted. Or you can do what I did. You can finish the work Michael and I started. You can pick up where we left off. There are people out there, dangerous people, who are still active. Still doing the things we fought against. The files will show you who they are. What they're planning. If you choose to act, you'll be giving up any chance at a normal life. You'll be stepping into my world. Michael's world. A world of secrets and danger and sacrifice. But you'll also be making a difference. A real difference. The kind that matters. It's your choice, Claire. It always was. I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you needed. I'm sorry I was cold and distant and impossible to know. But I'm not sorry for protecting you. And I'm not sorry for the work. I love you. Always. Mom. I set the journal down. My face was wet with tears. I didn't remember crying. My mother. The woman who'd raised me with cool efficiency and emotional distance. The woman who'd never hugged me spontaneously, never told me she was proud of me, never let me see her vulnerable. She'd been protecting me. From her past. From her work. From the truth that had gotten Michael Reeves killed. And now she was dead. And she'd left me a choice. Walk away, or follow her into the shadows. I looked around the garden house at the dusty chairs where we'd sat together reading fairy tales. Stories about girls who ventured into dark forests and faced terrible dangers. Stories about sacrifice and courage and transformation. She'd been preparing me my whole life. I just hadn't known it. I gathered the journal, the photograph, and the documents, locked the garden house behind me, walked back to the main house through the rain that had started falling again. I had a decision to make. But first, I had to go to New York. Part 2. Apartment 3B. The building was in Greenwich Village, a narrow brownstone wedged between a cafe and a vintage bookstore. 5 stories, iron fire escapes, windows with flower boxes. The kind of place that looked charming and bohemian in photographs, but probably cost a fortune to live in. I'd taken the first flight out of Portland the morning after finding the journal. I hadn't slept. I'd spent the night reading and rereading my mother's words, studying the documents, memorizing the photograph. Michael Reeves. The man who might be my father. The man whose eyes I might have inherited, whose stubborn independence might flow in my veins. I'd never know for certain. My mother had chosen ambiguity over truth, had chosen to believe what was convenient rather than what was real. But I could know who he was, what he'd done, why my mother had loved him. The building's front door was locked. I pressed the button for the super. A crackling voice answered. Yeah? Giuseppe? My name is Claire Hartwell. Eleanor sent me. A long pause. Then the door buzzed. I pushed it open. The lobby was small and worn, with a tiled floor and a wall of brass mailboxes. Stairs led upward. A door on the ground floor opened and an old man emerged. 70s, gray hair, suspicious eyes. Eleanor, he said. Not a question. A statement loaded with history. She finally told you. She died 2 weeks ago. His expression softened. I'm sorry. She was a good woman. Complicated, but good. He studied my face. You look like him. Michael, around the eyes. You knew him? I knew both of them. This building apartment 3B, it was their place. Michael rented it in '81, kept it until he died. After that, Eleanor kept paying the rent. 35 years she's been paying rent on an empty apartment. Never came here far as I know. Just sent the checks every month. My throat tightened. She kept it? All this time? Said it was important, said someday someone might need it. Guess that someone is you. He pulled out a key ring, selected an old brass key. 3rd floor. Take your time. Place hasn't been opened in decades, but I keep it clean. Eleanor paid me extra for that. I took the key. My hand was shaking. When you're done, Giuseppe said, come find me. I got things to tell you. Things Eleanor asked me to say if you ever showed up. I climbed the stairs slowly. The building was quiet, just the sound of someone's television through a door, the smell of cooking from another apartment. Normal life happening around this pocket of frozen time. The door to 3B was at the end of the hall. Solid wood, brass number. I put the key in the lock and turned it. The apartment was small, a studio, essentially. One room with a kitchenette, a bathroom, a Murphy bed folded into the wall, furniture from the '80s, frozen in time, a brown sofa, a coffee table, bookshelves. But it wasn't empty. The shelves were full. And on the coffee table sat 3 large boxes, new cardboard, my name written on each one in my mother's handwriting. I moved like I was in a dream. Sat on the sofa. Opened the first box. Money. Stacks of cash, bundled and organized. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. The second box contained jewelry. Not my mother's everyday pieces, but serious jewelry. Diamond necklaces, emerald earrings, gold bracelets. Things she'd never worn, never shown me. Things acquired over a lifetime in the shadows. The third box was different. It contained files, intelligence files, typed reports, handwritten notes, photographs, recordings on old cassette tapes. I pulled out the first file. It was labeled Operation Nightingale, 1983-1985. Inside were mission reports, surveillance photos, communications intercepts. A complex operation involving Soviet intelligence, double agents, and a network of informants across Eastern Europe. Michael Reeves' name appeared on every page. He'd been the lead investigator. And my mother had been his partner. Until he'd gotten too close. Until someone had decided he was a threat. The accident report was there too. Single-car collision, rural road outside Berlin. Michael had been driving alone late at night. Lost control on a curve, went off the road, died instantly. But attached to the accident report was another document. My mother's handwriting, a private analysis. Brake lines cut, signs of forced entry to the vehicle, tire tracks indicating another car forced him off the road. This was no accident. This was an execution. Target. Michael knew about Cardinal. He was close to identifying the mole. They killed him to keep him quiet. Cardinal is still active, still feeding information to Moscow, still causing damage. I couldn't stop them from killing Michael. But I can finish what he started. I will identify Cardinal. I will make them pay for what they did. Cardinal, a code name, a traitor. I flipped through more files, years of investigation. My mother had spent decades trying to identify the mole who'd gotten Michael killed. And eventually, she had. The name was in a file dated 1998, marked in red ink. Cardinal identified, Deputy Director Richard Lansing. Evidence sufficient for prosecution. Preparing to present findings to counterintelligence. This is for you, Michael. This is justice. But there was another document, dated a month later. Lansing has been neutralized. Cover story. Heart attack at his home. Official, clean, but the network remains. Cardinal was just one node. There are others. The operation continues. I can't stop now. Not when we're this close. My mother hadn't just identified the mole. She'd killed him. Or had him killed. And then she'd kept going, kept fighting, kept peeling back layers of corruption and betrayal. For 15 more years, according to the dates on the files, right up until she got sick. The last file was dated 3 months ago. Recent, just before her diagnosis. New activity. The network is active again. Same patterns, same methods, different people. They're planning something big. I can feel it. But I'm out of time. The cancer is spreading. I have 6 months, maybe less. Claire will have to decide. She'll have to choose whether to finish this. I've left her everything she needs. Evidence, contacts, resources. But I can't force her. I won't do to her what was done to me. I won't trap her in this life. If she walks away, I'll understand. I'll forgive her. It's what I want for her anyway. But if she picks up the torch, God help her. God help her, because this life will break her heart the way it broke mine. I set the file down. My hands were numb. My mind was reeling. My mother had been fighting a shadow war for 40 years, against traitors and spies and killers. She'd sacrificed love, sacrificed normalcy, sacrificed her relationship with me. And now she was asking if I would do the same. I looked around the apartment. This place where my mother and Michael had been happy, briefly, before duty and danger tore them apart. This shrine she'd maintained for decades, paying rent on memories and ghosts. What kind of love does that? What kind of grief? I spent the next 3 hours going through every file, reading every report, understanding the scope of what my mother had been doing. The network she'd been fighting wasn't just Cold War remnants. It was active, current, dangerous. People in positions of power selling secrets, undermining operations, getting agents killed. And she'd been stopping them, one by one, for 40 years. The last file included a list of names, current suspects, people my mother had been investigating when she got too sick to continue. 5 names, government officials, military officers, corporate executives, all with access to classified information, all exhibiting patterns my mother recognized. One of them was the new director of national intelligence. I sat back, overwhelmed. This wasn't some dusty Cold War conspiracy. This was happening now. This was active. This was real. And I had a choice. I could take the money, sell the jewelry, walk away. Start over somewhere new. Live the normal life my mother had wanted for me. Or I could pick up where she left off. I could finish what Michael started and what my mother had devoted her life to completing. I could step into the shadows. There was a knock at the door. Giuseppe's voice. "You all right in there?" I opened the door. He was holding a thermos and 2 cups. "Thought you might need coffee. It's a lot to take in, I bet." "You knew about all of this." "Not the details, but enough. Michael was a good man. Your mother was a good woman. They were fighting the good fight. Best I could tell." He poured coffee, handed me a cup. She left me a letter to give you. Said to wait until after you'd seen everything in the apartment. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. I opened it. Claire, if you're reading this, you've seen the files. You understand what I was doing. What Michael was doing. Giuseppe doesn't know the details, but he knew us. He was one of the few people in the world we trusted completely. If you need help, if you need a safe place, he'll help you. No questions asked. But here's what you need to know. The people on that list, the network my mother was fighting, they're dangerous. They have resources. They have connections. If you come after them, they'll come after you. You're not trained for this. You're not an agent. You're not a spy. You're my daughter, and I raised you to be safe and normal and far away from this world. But you're also Michael's daughter. You have his intelligence, his courage, his stubborn refusal to let injustice stand. If you decide to act, be smart. Be careful. Trust no one except Giuseppe. And remember, in this work, there's no winning. There's only the fight. The fight is all there is. I wish I could tell you to walk away. I wish I could give you permission to choose happiness over duty. But I can't, because I know you. You're more like me than you realize. You're more like Michael than I ever let myself admit. You'll choose the fight. You always would have. I raised you that way without meaning to. So here's my real advice. Be better than I was. Be braver. Be kinder. Let people in even when it's dangerous. Love, even when it's complicated. Don't let this work make you cold. Don't let it steal your heart the way it stole mine. Be the daughter of both of us. Michael's courage and my strength. But be yourself too. Be Claire. That's the only way to survive this. I love you. Always. Mom. I folded the letter and put it in my pocket. Looked at Giuseppe. She knew I'd choose this. She hoped you wouldn't. But yeah, she knew. He sipped his coffee. So what are you gonna do? I thought about my mother, cold and distant and emotionally unreachable. I thought about Michael Reeves, killed because he got too close to the truth. I thought about 40 years of shadow wars and secret battles and sacrifices no one would ever know about. I thought about the little girl sitting in the garden house, listening to fairy tales about girls who walked into dark forests and faced terrible dangers. I'm going to finish what they started, I said. Giuseppe nodded slowly. Then you're going to need help. You can't do this alone. My mother did. Your mother had training, had backup, had resources. You got files and money. That's not enough. What do I need? Allies. People who know how this world works. People who can teach you what you need to know. He pulled out a card, handed it to me. This man. He worked with your mother back in the day. Retired now, but he's solid. You tell him Eleanor's daughter needs help, he'll come. I looked at the card. A name. Thomas Brennan. A phone number? Nothing else. Can I trust him? Can you trust anyone? But yeah, more than most. He loved your mother back in the day. Not like Michael did, different. But he respected her. He'll help you for her sake. I pocketed the card. What about you? What do you want out of this? Giuseppe smiled, sad and knowing. I want to know your mother's work wasn't for nothing. I want to know Michael didn't die in vain. That's all. I can't promise that. No one can. But you can try. That's all any of us can do. Try. I finished my coffee. Looked around the apartment one more time. This frozen moment in time, this preserved piece of my mother's heart. I'll need to come back here. Is that okay? It's yours now. I'll keep it clean. Keep it safe. You need anything, you call me. I nodded. We shook hands. His grip was strong, steady. One more thing, he said. Your mother, those last years, she was happy, I think. Not joyful, but satisfied. She made peace with her choices. She made peace with Michael's death. She made peace with you. She never told me any of this when she was alive. Some things you can't say while you're still breathing. Some truths are too heavy. She did what she thought was right. That's all any parent can do. I left the building and walked through Greenwich Village in the late afternoon light. Tourists and locals streamed past me, living their normal lives, completely unaware of the shadows hiding in plain sight. My mother had walked these streets 40 years ago. She'd been young and in love and torn between duty and desire. She'd made her choice, and it had cost her everything that mattered. Now I was making the same choice. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on Thomas Brennan's card. It rang twice. A man's voice answered. "This is Claire Hartwell," I said. "Eleanor's daughter. I need your help." A pause. Then, "I've been expecting your call. How soon can you get to Virginia?" "Tomorrow." "Good. We have work to do." I hung up and hailed a cab to the airport. The normal life my mother wanted for me. It was gone now. Maybe it had never been real. Maybe I'd always been destined for this. The daughter of spies, the heir to secrets, the girl raised in emotional distance because love was too dangerous and closeness could get you killed. I understood her now. I understood all of it, and I wouldn't make the same mistakes. I would finish the work. I would find the traitors. I would bring them down. But I wouldn't do it alone. I wouldn't push people away. I wouldn't become cold and unreachable. I would be better than my mother. Braver than Michael. I would be Claire Hartwell, daughter of spies, and I would finish what they started. The safe had been empty except for a note. But the note had led me here. To the truth. To my purpose. To my choice. And I chose the fight. I chose to be my mother's daughter. I chose to step into the shadows and finish what love had started and duty had demanded. The breadcrumbs had led me home. And home, I realized, wasn't a place. It was a calling.